Thank you, Ed. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ed and Ahmed, for inviting me to this forum. When I say yes, I didn't know what the forum was about. I say yes because it was Ahmed. But I'm very glad that I did say yes. It has been very interesting, very stimulating, as always is when we have a small community, but a community that is dedicated to further the way we do the research and what we achieve out of research. And also, I am in a known place with known people. Ahmed was one of our PhD students. I was in the committee with Shirley. Shirley was one of my examiners. So it's a sort of family event. But before she was an examiner, one of the first people I met in ISS was Shirley. And that was a conference in Brisbane. I think it was ACES, or was ISIS. I can't remember if it was ACES or ISIS. ACES, it was ACES. You had a panel, and we have a chat after the panel, and she mentioned that maybe for the type of problem I was to research, grounded theory could be an approach that I could take. And then she was generous enough to send me a chapter from Van de Ven and Paul, in which they were using grounded theory. So I didn't know what the word was then, or the methodology, or I didn't know anything then, and I don't know much more now either. But that was the start of a journey. So I've been doing grounded theory now for quite a few years, like 15 years or so. And I'm going to talk about some of the myths around grounded theory. The first reaction I got from my supervisor, a great man called Alan Underwood. Alan was an institution in QT where I did my PhD, but he had absolutely no idea of grounded theory. And at that time at QT, it was a very positivist place. So they didn't want to have anything that was strange, and the most people were doing was a survey followed by a case study, very shallow case study, or a shallow case study followed by a survey. And that was very much the scope. So I was trying to pioneer some new, weird way of doing research, and they didn't like it. And that was great. Because they didn't like it, I have the opportunity to start learning about how this should be done and trying to get over the myth. I think that some of the things that we do as scientists, I think that we are all scientists, is to try to differentiate what is myth and what is truth, and trying to find out what is actually behind what people are saying. And the beauty of that experience was that I was able to prove to them that what they were saying was incorrect. And they accepted that. And I have no problem from there on in pursuing the methodology that I adopted, and because I understood why I adopted that methodology. Now, that's a brief description of part of my trip on grounded theory. And then I kept working on this, and I kept working on the method. I founded a SIG with other friends in the association. I'm still the president. I'm going to step down as a president as soon as I get the paperwork done. But I've been the president since 2006, 2007. We have myth and we have reality in everything that we do. The myths do have value, and even if they are incorrect, they have consequences. Consequences for you, consequences for me, consequences for everyone. Because myths, even if they are incorrect, they are things that people believe, and people base their actions in what they believe. And that may affect your career and all that. So, to start with, we're going to define grounded theory. I'm not going to give you a workshop on how to do grounded theory. There are many books that you should read for that. Or you may go to a full day or 3 days workshop and get something properly done. I'm going to talk about something different. I'm going to try to talk about why we sometimes do not succeed, what we should do to have success in this. So what it is, it's an inductive theory discovery methodology. It's actually not quite inductive or not purely inductive. It's mildly inductive. Allows the researcher to develop a theoretical account of the feature of the topic. Let's say that you are doing ICT for development or in developing countries. And that will allow you to get into that context. That will be the substantive field of your work. But it does give you certain tools to be able to ground your empirical account or your theory on the data that you're observing. And it's not something that you're going to do whichever way it comes. There are certain rules. There are certain things that you have to follow. And each one of those rules and things and techniques and steps have a reason. They do not just become there, they just become into existence because someone decided to go that way. The way that it is done is in itself grounded on the evolution of the thought in science and how we can get to know about something. So that is how we do that empirical observation of the data, how we're going to construct something out of what we are observing, which way we can do that. So it does give you certain indication. The primary objective is to develop middle range theories, the type of theory that you will be developing in India, in Pakistan, whatever you're doing the research. At ANU, we just finished one on East Timor, talking about how big e-government projects are implemented in East Timor. And so Abel is back into his country and is already working for the East Timorese government, so which is a good news. So he's going to make change, not as an academic, but from within the government through the learnings that he achieved during his PhD. So one of the beauties of grounded theory is that gets that relevance as well as the rigor. So the methodology gives you the rigor, but if you are conducting the study in a meaningful area, you are highly likely to achieve also relevance because you're looking at problems that people consider to be important. There are three things, and this is part of the definition, so going very quickly about this. You collect data, you analyze data, and you assess the need for data. Those are the three basic steps that you have in grounded theory. But there are ways of doing that. This is a continuous improvement process. In this process, there are no shortcuts. There is a lot of work that has to be done. And this is when people fail, mainly, when they claim that they're doing grounded theory, because they do not understand the process. In fact, I will pose that they are not doing grounded theory, because they never bothered to study grounded theory. So what they're doing is something that feels natural. And each one of us is already wired to do this type of research. If you read cognitive psychology, you will see that this is what we do. This is a journey of exploration that we are wired to do. We have a mental map of what is out there in the universe. And then we have a question, we go and we do exploration. And the exploration changes our map. And we have a new mental map. And we keep going that way, unless you're totally convinced that you know all that is there to know, and then you do not do the exploration. But that's how we do it. But there are ways and ways of doing it. Some are more rigorous, Some are more efficient. Some will give you a better result than others. So how are you going to do that? So each element, the collection, the analyze, and the assessment of the data that you will need to further your investigation is critical. And is particularly demanding. It's not something that is, it's not that it's difficult to do, but it takes energy, it takes time, it takes work. And also it takes time to learn how to do that. You need to do each one of the elements following the method. The method is not a cookbook recipe. So you cannot go from A to Z and voila, you will have the theory coming out of the other end. So you need to understand why things are done rather than what you have to do next. Because in understanding what and how and why, then you can actually be creative and coming up with something. Otherwise, if you just follow a recipe, you're not going to get into much. I'm going to say that I'm sick of listening to people excusing themselves, saying, this is too hard to publish. I'm sick first because it's not true. It's not hard to publish. And there are many articles there that have been published. If you want to see articles in grounded theory, go to any of these. These are top journals, with the exception of IT and People, which is an A in our list. All the others are A stars. And the two that you could argue, people say that are the top ones, MSQ and ISR. Sorry about mentioning ISR in your presence, Robert. That's okay. Have published a lot of good grounded theory articles. So why they do that? Because they know how to do it. They know the game. And when I say the game, I say the game in a good sense. This is the good game. The game that you understand the rules, the game that you get to publish. And the game that you get to publish good research. So understanding that the game is important. So no excuses. It's not because you adopted a method that you cannot publish. Maybe you cannot publish because you're doing rubbish research. And in some cases, you are doing rubbish research because you have rubbish training. And we are in charge now of giving you the training. So how are you going to give you the training? How we are going to prepare you to be good researchers so that when you finish your career, you have a position to go to in a market that is getting more and more demanding, that you have to compete more and more. So how are we going to do that? Anyway, there are no answers to that. We're trying to improve. Because as Robert said before, what it was okay 10 years ago is not longer okay. The market is extremely competitive. And there are many other journals. There are excellent journals that you can publish as well. I'm only mentioning the one in the basket of 6, okay, or basket of 8. I'm going to switch now. I'm going to talk about execution, one of the topics close to my heart in research and many other things. Execution. You're seeing here ducks, goose, whatever they are, and they're flying in certain formation. They don't fly in a random formation. They fly in a V formation. Why they fly in a V formation? Why are they doing that? Because they're ducks, they're silly ducks? Why are they doing that? That's the best way. It's the most efficient way. And they swap the first one, and they keep rotating. They can fly faster, further, all those sort of things. So some of our ducks researchers are flying further and faster than other ducks. So maybe because they get this formation right, okay? So there are things that they get right. And we get to see them in the journals that I showed you before. And we get to read the articles, and sometimes we get scared by the articles because for you, the articles are so good. One of my recent PhD students, after reading a few articles, said I would never be able to write a thing like this. Sometimes it's scary. But what happened with the articles that you do not see? The articles that I see as associate editor, senior editor, and the articles that I do not send for review because they are not good enough. And work as an editor in one journal in the bucket of 6. The acceptance rate is 3%. 3%. It's not MISQ or ISR, and it's 3%. 70% of the papers do not go to review. This is not to scare you. This is to tell you that you need to wake up and you need to understand your game, and wherever research method you pick, you need to understand now what are you doing. Because if you do not do that, you're not going to win in this game. I found 4 problems of execution. I'm only talking about ground theory. If these 4 problems may also happen in other ways of doing research, but I'm only talking about this. The first one, and the root of all evils, is uneducated use. Then, because of maybe the uneducated use, you are not using your data properly. You do not understand epistemology. That's one of the questions I answered yesterday, how much space in your mind epistemology it takes when you're doing a PhD. For some of you, it's 0. For some of you, you don't even know what the word actually means. And some of you may be in the 3rd year, and you do not. Don't feel like you are lonely because you are in a company of many. But that is something that we need to address. Because in the past, you were able to publish even if you have a salad of epistemologies in your articles. But that is changing. People becoming more and more demanding for good reasons. Then you have low theoretical value, which is certainly what is going to kill your article. You need to have a contribution. But all these sort of things tend to compound. You have an educated use, you have misused the data, then you do not understand what you're doing or why you're doing and the nature of the reality you're looking at, and you roll in that reality in constructing whatever you are constructing, how the theory that you are producing is going to be okay. It's impossible, or almost impossible. You could be lucky. Uneducated use. So if you're going to take grounded theory as your method, you have a responsibility to educate yourself. Not just read one article from me or Kathy or anyone and believe that because you read that article, you know how to do it. Because you do not. And you will never learn from an article. You need to go back to the books. I'm going to show you the books very soon. Some people I've seen, they're trying to develop grounded theory, creating new ways of doing grounded theory without ever read a book about grounded theory. So they understood few concepts, typically badly understood, and they try to do a modification, an innovation. So you have multi-grounded theory, which is a concept that doesn't exist because the method allows for that. You need to read the seminal text, and you need to avoid jargonizing. Why jargonizing occurs? What does it mean? Jargonizing is using the terms of grounded theory without understanding what they mean. The reason why people jargonize is to achieve legitimacy. So you're using the terms, I did this, I did that, but you didn't do it. So we have an ethical problem as well. If people are saying, making a claim, this is what I did, and it's false. So maybe you're not doing that because you are a bad person, But it's just that you do not understand what you're doing. But still, the claim is false. Okay, so we're dealing with that. These are the issues that we see on those papers that you're never going to see published in the top journal. Misuse of data. Because grounded theory can be done with any kind of data. Could be quantitative, could be qualitative, could be a mix of everything. Could be literature. It has been done in many, many ways. And we have that dictum from Glaser, Barney Glaser, saying all is data. And it's true, all is data, including your thoughts that can be recorded and tested against other pieces of evidence. So everything is evidence to be tested, compare, and check. But you need to know why you're gathering the data. It's not because it's there like Mount Everest. So you need to understand the reason why you're getting that. And that is part of that theoretical sampling that you're going to be involved with. So the justification for the type of data need to be, that you're using in your study, need to be explicit. And that data need to offer a very good fit to the problem. So what is essential in grounded theory is that you define that problem at the very beginning extremely well. If you do not do that, that's the first step. That's where the big mistake gets in. Robert says that you have no perfect research, and that's true. But if you have a research that have many errors, and we are committing errors all along the way as we do in the research, or any research, any investigation. So if you are not able to minimize the errors, you cannot aspire to publish in the type of journal that are going to give you the first post. And that's part of the things. There is other things with publishing. The reason why we're doing research is because we're trying to generate some knowledge, but it's no knowledge for you. It's knowledge to be communicated, to be used. So we need to, if you can publish in a better journal, therefore you reach, depending on the journal, a wider community. I'm inspired by what is happening with your journal of electronic journal, in which you have 40,000 people, hopefully, reading the article. So that is a great way of doing things. But anyway, incongruent epistemology. Yesterday, people were talking about epistemology issues. Objective, subjective realities, all those sort of things. This is extremely important. And one of the problems we have, not a problem, it's a feature of the method, but it can be a problem, is that GTM, because it's accepting all type of data, is orthogonal to the data, but it's also orthogonal to the epistemology that you are adopting. You could do positivist grounded theory, critical grounded theory, constructivist, whatever you want to do, you can do it within the method. But you need to know what you're doing. That's the key issue. Otherwise, it's an epistemological salad. And we're going to take questions at the end. Sorry, I should have said that at the beginning. And then you can answer the questions. We're going to have about half an hour of questions. So the point I'm making here is that the flexibility that you have in the system is an advantage, and it's also a risk, because it doesn't mean epistemological confusion. So when epistemology doesn't have room in your brain, because we are not training you well, it's our fault, then if you take this method and you are not thinking about these issues, you're running a risk. When we see an article, what is your position in producing the article is extremely important. Supratik Sarka, he has an editorial in MISQ, I think it was early this year, in which he's talking about this issue as well. And how many people actually make explicit the epistemology of the research? Where are you coming from? Which way should I analyze? Michael has another excellent article in how can I analyze this type of interpretive research? What should I be looking for? So if you specify your take, your epistemology, if I am your editor and I have one reviewer that is assessing your study with the wrong lens, I can defend you. I can do what Robert says, okay, and cancel that review out, send it for a different review, or taking that on myself. And senior editors and associate editors, if they're doing their work, they will do that, because the business is to publish. But you need to help them. And one way that you can help them is by being explicit about what you are doing. So if you're a positivist, it should be assessed on positivist terms, the value of your study, not on interpretivist, and the other way around. So this is extremely important that you do that. To defend yourself, as well as to know what you're doing and why you're doing the things that you're doing. The last one is low theoretical value. Sometimes it's a consequence of all the previous mistakes, all the previous errors that you've been committing. You need to achieve that description, conceptualization, and integration. You can use grand theory to describe things, and that's good. It will give you a very good tool to describe that context, what is happening, and you will be able to show the different things that are happening in that context, the different dimensions and all that. But if you're going to continue and try to develop a theory, it will allow you to produce a theory that have certain concepts that are at work and they are interrelated. If you go one step further, you will be able to integrate your study with other studies. There are two types of integration. One, the integration that you do with the theory. And in grand theory, the theory that you're going to use as a lens is going to be there because it fits what you're seeing. So if you go and you do that study in Bangladesh, the lens should be fitting the data. So you do not start with the lens, but out of the study you did, you see that this lens will be appropriate to reanalyze the data and produce the story for your article. So you do that. That's the first step. The second step, you must engage with the community you're working with. So let's say that I like to read Bourdieu, for instance, and in some cases, some of the problems that we've been dealing with, it has been close to the concept of habitus that Bourdieu proposed. But that's not enough. You need to engage with the IS community. So you need to get your study into the bigger body of literature in IS, and also in, could be sociology, could be psychology, could be whatever. Those are the four things that can jeopardize your article. There is a fifth one that I've been thinking about, and that is the presentation. One of the problems that you have with grand theory is that for the normal way that we present data or we present studies in articles is that is inverted. So we usually talk about the theory at the beginning, and we do the literature review at the beginning. We do all the sort of things in an article, and then we come up with the conclusions and all that. And you have to revert the way of thinking, the way of doing when you're doing grand theory. But you do not need to do that on the article. So I'm going to show you a few exemplars, or I'm going to mention a few exemplars in which these people have done grand theory, but they do present the article in the way that people expect the information to be presented. So you are not confusing the reader. The point is you need to make the reader ready to read your article. So if you have that learn use, you use the data as it's supposed to be used, and you know why you're using the data. and you are adding value, you have a very good chance of publishing grounded theory. Mike and Hans Lehmann and Kathy has an article, I think it's ISJ, and done extensive, have a look extensively at the literature and concluded that it's one of the most used methodologies together with the case study in information systems. It's getting popular to do qualitative studies in information systems. And so it can be done, it certainly can be done. These are the books that you need to read. I'm sorry, there are no shortcuts. Grounded theory takes about 1 year to learn. And that's 1 year of reading books and doing. So you have to do the two things. These are the key books. Those are the minimal reading. Glaze and Strauss 67 will help you to understand why you're doing what you're doing. What is the philosophy behind? The philosophy behind the grounded theory. It talks about the discovery. And have a look, they use the word discovery very wisely. Grounded theory been there for a long time. It wasn't discovered, it was not created. People been doing this. Why? As I said before, we are wired to do this. The most important work that you can see all the elements of grounded theory in it took about 50 years to be published. And that's the theory of evolution. That is a grounded theory study. If you analyze what Darwin did, each step, how the data was collected, why it was collected, you will see that it's a grounded theory. It doesn't have the label because the label didn't exist. So all these people did was trying to figure out how to do this. The best book to me is Theoretical Sensitivity, the 78 book. And then you have Doing Grounded Theory, extremely useful book. These three books, the four books actually now, I will ask my students to have it next to their PC all the time, because you have to go back to them. You read it cover to cover, and then you revisit the book every time you're doing something that you do not quite understand how it works, and it will happen to you. So this is how it works. It's not a major investment. The latest one is Charmas, 2014, Constructive Grounded Theory, the second edition, not the first edition. Charmas did a brilliant job in the second edition. It's more than twice as big as the first one, and it has heaps of examples, perfectly explained, very easy to understand. And I think that that is a very good addition to the other three books. So you can see there is an evolution of thought. I'm not going to give you all the history of grounded theory, otherwise I will put you to sleep further than you are now. But the point I'm making here is that every method, every way of doing research evolves. And it's interesting because I've been tracking the families of evolution. And last year when I was at the Academy of Management, and there was this lady and in the same panel, and we didn't know, there's a Lloyd, and we didn't know that she was the daughter of Lasserfeld, and Lasserfeld was the one that taught Glaser. And so the connection that we have between and Merton, and we have a huge number of Bloomer, a huge number of important people in the philosophy of science, the social philosophy, that contributed to the development of the methodology. That's why it is hard when I have a PhD student that say, oh, but I can do something different. Yeah, how you can do something different? How are you going to do that? So you need to learn first why things are done, in which way it should be done. Then perhaps you can do an evolution, you can do something new. Anyway. If you have a look at the sources that I don't expect you to read that, the sources from Glaze and Stroud, this is not a complete list. This is just, I stopped a certain year, I don't know which year I stopped adding to this slide. It's just getting too big because the books, especially the ones from the people that know what they're talking about, are many books. It is a complex methodology. And like any complex methodology, that's why you need to go back to the textbooks. You need to understand why things are done. Again, I know I'm stressing this too much, but if I do so, it's because it's important for you to understand. If you're not going to use this method and you're going to pick a different method, that's great, but do the same. If it's an important methodology, trying to learn, go back to the books, read what you're doing, understand what you're doing, because that will make a huge difference later on. Your PhD is only the first step. It's what you're going to do after the PhD. You're going to commit to all the mistakes, all the errors that you do in your PhD. But that's how you learn. You're trying to learn as much as you can, and this is important. Back, I think it was 2005, December 2005, we used to have this conference in Australia and New Zealand as well on qualitative research, Qual IT. I think it hasn't been done for the last few years. It used to be run out of Griffith University, and Lisa was one of the major forces behind that. And at that conference, we were talking with Kathy Urquhart about the myth, because I've been thinking about the myth for quite a while. So we sat, we have lunch, and I was saying why people are saying the things that are totally incorrect. If you read the books, you know that this is not correct. And why people keep repeating. And I even have seen, witnessed, very senior people in our community saying things that are totally wrong, because you could be the top guy in the field and still make mistakes. But why? The more important question is why they keep repeating things that are wrong. So it must be a perception out there, and why they do that. There are four problems, or four myths, that we have somehow perpetuated. The first one is the blank slate. The second one is that it's inflexible, that produce low-level theories, that is positivist or interpretivist or whatever. It doesn't have to be. All of these are myths. The article that we have, the discussion that we have with Kathy ended up in an ISS paper in 2006, and then end up in a paper in JIT that came up in 2013. That paper, we've been very lucky with that paper, and have received some awards or whatever. But the point is that the paper, if you're going to do grounded theory, you must be aware of this paper, because it gives you pointers to seminal work, or in our field, in IS, that has been published in the top 2 journals. We do acknowledge that the other journals that publish good grounded theory, but we only wanted to have a look at ISR and MISQ. The reason for that was that we wanted to make sure that people would not argue that this is not at the very top. So what people at the very top, and that doesn't mean that these articles will be better than articles maybe in ISJ or EGs or other journals. It's just that they're published there. So we're trying to give a few tips, guidelines, and how to do these things, and how to approach the myth. The first one is the phase literature review, so that you can have different phases. And we explain how the literature review should be done, and this is mainly my work, how the literature review should be done in grounded theory. Then how to use GTM with flexibility, but with knowledge. and then how to present grounded theory. I get you back. The point is communicating your research at the top level that you can communicate, whatever that is. We have a new colleague in UNSW, Champagne, and I love what he said the other day, that everyone should grow after doing the PhD 30 centimeters. Okay? I love that, because what Sean is saying is it doesn't matter where you come, at what high you come, you're going to grow a bit. And I think that for us as academic, the function is that you grow a bit. And if you grow that bit, then we're happy. Some of you will grow to publish in the top tier. Some maybe are going to be happy with A's or whatever. And that's fine, so long you're doing your best. Now, the first guideline is related to the phase literature review. When people say, grounded theory asks you to be a blank slate, they show in the ignorance and nothing more. And sometimes I feel embarrassed when I see senior people saying such a stupid thing. I really do. And I'm embarrassed, upset. Why are they saying that? Why are they perpetuating this myth? They are clever. They are not that. Yeah. This is what the literature should be. Now, one student of mine, after 6 months, he has reviewed about 500 articles already. And he's on the first phase, the preliminary literature review. Extremely intense. This is what we call the non-committal phase. And what are you reviewing in that phase? You're reviewing the research problem, because you need to define the research problem. You need to understand what is the problem in terms of theory and in terms of relevance to practice, in terms of relevance to your developing countries. You need to understand what the problem is. You need to find that gap. Not the question, the problem. Is a big difference there. You need to understand the research nature. So what type of research you have to do? And that's when you come into all these issues of epistemology, try to understand the nature of the reality you have to deal with. All those sort of things come there. You need to read about this. You need to study. It doesn't just come into you from some sort of divine force. And you need to understand the methodology. You need to read the books. You need to talk to people. Maybe you need to interact with people that know, take some courses, whatever you need to do. We are getting better in Australia now with the courses we are doing. That is, I resisted that at the beginning. But I see value now in doing the courses and people getting all these methodology courses, quantitative, qualitative, start doing more on the nature of our research. So this preliminary literature review is extremely important. As you move on, you get into data collection and analysis. And we start talking about different things that we do there, like open coding, theoretical coding, sorting, memoing, all the things, all the activities that you will do if you're following this method. When you're doing this, certain themes, certain concepts will become more important. And then you go back to the literature and you start looking at those concepts and themes. Let's say that people are talking about trust as being one of those concepts that are very important. You cannot continue your research without understanding what trust means. It's coming from the data, so it's important to them. How are you going to continue to saturate if you do not understand what the literature says on that particular concept? This is similar to what people do in quantitative research when they build the constructs. They need to understand how to build the constructs, and you need to do the same. Even if you're doing it a different way, in an interpretive way or whatever, you could be positivist as well. Finally, once you do that and you understand the problem and the theory starts to emerge, that is when you go back to the theoretical literature review. because you have something that is emerging. It's not ready yet. But which theory is going to apply? Which one will fit? And that involves your work in looking at the, and that resource that Robert mentioned before is useful. You may use that as a first cut. You may talk to your supervisor, which is likely to have seen more theories that you have. And talk to other people. This is when you start communicating. You start to get in ideas. What will make sense? What will help me to make sense of what I'm seeing? And that's how you start integrating with a greater body of knowledge. And then you look at how what you're seeing is affecting the theories in IS. Because you need to publish in IS. You're doing IS. So how are you going to do that? So you integrate that. So this is the third wave of literature review. You will be doing literature review not only at the beginning, and I will put that in no methodology you just do it only at the beginning. You keep doing the literature review continuously. But especially in grander theory. There are 3 different waves of literature review that needs to be done properly. So you want to publish in MISQ what MISQ is saying about your topic, what others are saying about your topic. You need to understand that. And around that topic. So you will understand your contribution. I put a lot of emphasis on this one because to us, I'm talking for Kathy and I, that was the most important one, the most damaging one. Because when we go and we do seminars or workshops, the most common thing that I found on the students that claim to be doing grander theory is that they are not doing this. That they believe that they can go into the research being some sort of blank slate. And then we have the result that Robert was talking about. We have just journalism or whatever you want, storytelling. But there's no theory because it will not emerge just because you're talking to people. So you need to understand how you're doing. And you need to understand how you're doing that in a proper way. Okay. I think I talk a lot about this. You need to develop knowledge on the method, and then once you develop the knowledge, you will be able to evolve the method. So you will be able to say, okay, I can use this, taking some techniques, maybe from case study. Or I'm going to do an ethnography, or as Richard Baskerville, using that for action research. But you need to develop that knowledge first. I think that this is the one that is more important to you. Everyone, I think that Robert did, I saw that yesterday as well. We tend to show you exemplars. Why we do that? Because we want you to observe what other people did well, how they did it, the form in which they did it, and why. These people have already been successful. What you do not see is the whole process of reviewing, which becomes blind to everyone, in which the article maybe was the first version maybe was very crude, but you have Robert as the senior editor, and he thought that there was value in the article, so he keeps working, so trying to get that gold nugget out of the article. And you get to publish. But you need to see at least the final version, so you can aim to get something like that. The first one that I'm giving you here is a full use of grander theory by Mike Barrett and Jeff Walsham in '99. That is in ISR. Mike and Jeff, I can only talk for Mike. I don't know if Jeff was part of that or not. But isn't anywhere in that article it said that it's a grander theory. Only if you know grounded theory and you read the article, you know that it's grounded theory. The reason why is that, just between us, is because a reviewer asks Mike to drop the term. Okay? So what you do when you are seeking for tenure and a reviewer in ISR asks you to drop 3 words, just delete it, okay? 2 seconds. It will take me half a second to do that. Okay? I'm not blaming them. I'm saying that this is part of the game. Now it's easier. That was 99. That was very hard then, but they managed to do it. The beauty of that article is how they compiled the data, how they did the study, and how they presented the study. And at no point any one of these misrepresent the study. So if you know about grounded theory, you will know that it was a grounded theory study. They have the right citations, and they explain what they did. They just deleted the label. Very clever. Then you have another one, producing a rich description. They didn't went to, sorry, I can't remember if that was MISQ, I think. I'm not quite sure. Garud and Kumaraswamy. I think it's MISQ. It is in my notes anyway. They did grounded theory providing a rich description, which it could be good in the case of developing countries in which the context is so important. So if the context itself has value, and that's what you want to do, have a look at that article. Hunter and Beck use a technique for grounded theory, and they explain how they use the technique. It was the repertory grid. That's another way of producing an article. Then you have people that have used grounded theory as a partial tool. They are not claiming we did a grounded theory. What they're claiming is we borrow certain techniques because they were useful to our work. And that is Monte Alegre and Kale, 2000 MISQ. This is important. It's important why? Because they're honest, and they should be honesty in reporting. Many of the articles we saw in grounded theory, some of the published articles, they were not grounded theory. They were mislabeled. And maybe 15 years ago you could get away with it, but not now, because we have critical mass. Our SIG had more than 150 people that are participating in the SIG, grounded theory SIG. There is always a good reviewer to review your article, someone that knows how it's supposed to work. So the chance that you have in the past of picking up a label, just stick it to it because you think it's going to give you some authority or recognition, is gone. So the game is becoming harder. But this is good because it's getting better as well. And hopefully the theories that we're going to produce are going to be better. Finally, I'm going to give you, this is from EGs. We wrote we have a special issue on grounded theory, and we wrote an editorial with Berks, Levina, and Nasirin. And we struggled a lot with this in a sense that we wanted to present, and this is the same that as we are doing in the special interest group, we are non-religious. We don't care which type of grounded theory you're using, because there are several types by now due to the evolution, but there are core concepts that are essential. So the advice we give to reviewers is to look for this, to assess the rigor. And the only rigor that we are talking about is procedural rigor. That's the only thing that you can assess. The other things that are important to assess is the contribution. Okay, that's a different thing. You can be very rigorous in your precision and still produce rubbish. Or not rubbish, but something that doesn't have theoretical contribution. So the research objective have to be clearly stated. And we need to know if you are doing the research to develop theory or to provide that rich description of what you're seeing. Both ways are okay. It's just that you have to be clear what you're doing and target that as a single point in your paper. Cost and comparison. You need to show us that you've been, cost and comparison is comparing all the incidents and coming to a concept and being able to describe that concept because you are comparing incident against incident. And then you carry on doing that comparison. You need to provide evidence of that. It's your duty to provide evidence. It's science. Doesn't matter which type of science, it's science. So you must provide evidence. You may not see the evidence in the articles that you read in the journal, though. Sometimes we ask during the review process for authors to provide that evidence, and they either, in some cases, they go into appendices. In some cases, we drop it after we are convinced that, yep, it is good. It's no need to show that, but we as a reviewers or review panel, we are satisfied. So you need to have that. So you need to show that. Iterative coding. So how did you understand the evidence? Have you done the type of coding that you are expected to do? Have you done that well? Have you done that in enough manner? Are you providing evidence? Are you sorting? How you use your memos? How you drive the research? How you come to the conclusions? Okay, so that's connected to the chain of evidence. It's your duty to show the chain of evidence, otherwise we just believe in you. And then you have the theoretical sampling. How you did the sampling, and you're not sampling for representativeness. You're sampling according to the needs of your theoretical construction. So you were looking for both things, two things, converging and diverging data. And you're trying to negate what you've seen by looking at different places. That will give you internal validity as well, together with the coding. And will allow you to generalize sometimes in a wider context, sometimes. You need to show how you manage your preconceptions. And many of you, especially when you're doing research in which your heart is attached to something, like in ICT for development, you will have preconceptions. The method will help you because you can write your preconceptions as a memo and then test it against other pieces of evidence that you will be collecting. The best thing that will happen to you is when your preconceptions are proven wrong, because you will be learning something. It happened to me during my research. Okay, I assume that leadership has something to do. I trained on leadership. I read a lot about leadership. It have absolutely nothing to do with what I was looking at, and I had to drop it. But that's okay. You learn. And then you have to see that link between the data collection and the data analysis. That have to be explicit. Concluding. How to take advantage of the method. First thing for you as a PhD student and for anyone that is attempting to take up the method is to learn it. To invest time in reading the books, to understand why you're doing what you're doing, to know what are the next steps, to know that you will be confused, that you're going to go back, and this is the art and craft of generating theory, being able to sort that confusion into some sort of sense, and following the methodology will allow you to do that. It's not the only methodology that will allow you to do that, but it's one of them. You need to articulate the study in a manner that is understood to the readers. And you need to do that in order to communicate your results. And you need to do that integrating the knowledge that is already in your field, because you need to engage in that communication with the people that are working in your area. So you need to do that. And in order to be successful at that, you also need to review and publish GTM papers, as many as you can. But be a good reviewer. Like here today, very good advice to reviewers. You only have, it is extremely important to you and your careers to be a good reviewer. And a good reviewer is one that is constructive, that when you see value in an article, you don't kill the article because you are envious of that article or jealous. But you try to help the article to become better. And if you are reviewing for me and I see that you're doing that, I will call you again. And at one point, you will have some papers being published, and you being part of the reviewing process that publish certain papers. And you may be called to be an associate editor because you have developed skills, and so and so. You get the picture. So this is extremely important. And when you review, one of the things that we do when we review, we see our mistakes in the papers of others. So we recognize others' mistakes, but those are the same mistakes that we're doing. So we improve our writing by reviewing, and we become better writers, I think, by reviewing. Thank you. That's enough from me.